I want to welcome our speaker. I hear that he's a legend from Houston. We got today Danny B. with 42 years of sobriety. Everybody, please welcome him to the stage with a big ol' yeehaw! Thank you, Danny.
What did you want me to read? The 1940s preamble. There. Y'all nervous? My name's Danny. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm very happy to be here. And very kind of surprised to be here, actually. I'm suddenly really emotional. And I just hate that. You know, I mean, because it's got to where it happens to me more and more. You know, get up and I think about Alcoholics Anonymous, and I think about my life, and I think about walking into AA 44 years ago, and it was just a mistake. You know, I wasn't going to AA. I walked into AA, got a cup of coffee, and a brand new life. But I wasn't looking for that at all. I was fighting with my fourth wife, and because she had a boyfriend, and it was like I knew this was going to ruin our marriage, and of course I had my part in it. I'd just gotten out of prison for the second time, and things had not gone well, and I had hepatitis. I was 34 years old, and my life was exactly the way it had always been from the time I'd left home. I was just on my way either back to prison or back to an institution or back out on the streets. And there was just no escaping it. It was like a 3-year cycle. And it's about to happen again. I got hot checks out because I had a job, but it's very hard to work and guard your wife. And of course, there was a drinking problem. It was a little bit. I never thought of it as drinking as being a problem. It was like that's how I would become inspired. You know, it's just like you get so frustrated and so confused and so overwhelmed, and my head would start racing, and I think I got to go. I don't know where I got to go. I don't know why I've got to go, but I can't be here. I got to go. And I think what to do, and I don't know. And I'll take a drink, and I'm gonna be okay. And I'll think of something, and I'd take a drink, and I don't have to go so bad, and I can relax a little bit, and I feel better. And I got some ideas. I'll write a hot check. You know, I'll go see my wife and explain to her how much I love her, and she needs to leave him alone. And but then I black out and. You know, here we are all over again. I had reached the point where I was wearing an eye patch. I had nothing wrong with my eye. I just thought I looked kind of mysterious, you know, sort of a tragic figure, you know, and I'd had a truck, and it got repossessed because they want you to pay. And so I stole a car. It was a terrible car. The guy didn't even want it back. And I mean, it was, and I couldn't register it, or, you know, the license plates are expired. So it's a stressful ride. And you know, and then you've got my parole officer, who I was supposed to see monthly, and I didn't have anything good to report, so I was putting it off. And, you know, and I'm out of the hospital, and I'm sick, and I'm hungover, and I'm trying to get something together. And she stopped in the middle of the day in Midland, Texas, and just said, "Get out of the car." And I don't know why. I usually would stay and fight. But I got out of the car, and she drove off. We didn't have cell phones. So I walked into this building. It was just a nondescript-looking building. I thought it was an oil company or something. Let me use the phone and call a friend. And I walked in there. As I stuck my head in the door, over in the corner there were some people sitting around. They were playing cards and drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes. And when they saw me, they were very happy to see me. And they invited me in, and very friendly people. And it wasn't long so they were saying things to me like, if you don't drink, you won't get drunk. And I thought, why, I think you're right. I'm not sure where you're going with that, but I just want to use the phone. And they said, well, if you'll just stay for the meeting, we'll give you a ride afterwards. And so, it's okay. I don't have a lot of choice. So I stayed for a meeting. They had call-up meeting. They'd call him Patrick. He'd come up here and say something just absolutely horrible about his life. Everybody'd laugh and then go sit down. And I thought, oh, my God, I would have never said something like that about myself in front of people. And it just went on and on. They said it was an hour, but it seemed a lot longer. And when it was over, everybody stood up, held hands, and said the Lord's Prayer. And then that place just erupted into laughter, everybody talking at the same time. And I'm standing there's a back door, and all of a sudden, it's all back on me, and I got to go. And I started backing out towards that back door, and that place parted like the Red Sea. And here come this little dour-looking fellow with a flat top. He had a young guy with him, and he was heading towards me. I saw him coming, and I thought, oh, hell no, I ain't going anywhere with that guy. And he walked up to me, and he said, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. We're going to Baskin-Robbins for ice cream. Would you like to go? And I thought, Baskin-Robbins for ice cream. Be still my beating heart. There is no way on God's green earth I'm going off with a bunch of geriatrics for ice cream while my wife is out with her boyfriend. That's not happening. But what I said was, sure, I'd love to go. So you wind up over at Baskin-Robbins holding the melting Rocky Road ice cream while people try to pitch you on Alcoholics Anonymous. And, and I'm a bottom line kind of a guy. I do not want to read your big book. I'll read the answers in the back or whatever. But, we need to get to the bottom of things. I have way too much going on to sit down and have a long chat about me or your book. And, I'd turn to somebody and say, do you think I'm alcoholic? And they'd just start telling me all about themselves. And I thought, Jesus, nobody around here listens. I don't care if you're alcoholic. I don't even like you. I want to know if I am. And no one would ever really answer me directly. Some months later, I can tell you, that was my been around date. That was in the fall of 79. That's what I like to call it, my been around date, because you come to AA, and you get started, you last a week. It's a little stressful, you have a drink, you come back, get a desired chip, cry, get a new sponsor. Because the last one didn't know what he was doing. Last 2 weeks, drink, come back, and it just goes on. And after a while, you're well known. And you come in, and they see you coming, and they say, well, how long have you been sober this time? Well, that's offensive to hear. And you say, well, I'm sober 32 days this time, but I've been around since, I didn't want you to think just because I was drinking, you didn't know what we were doing here. And anyway, my mom had secretly joined Al-Anon, and she was my prime enabler. So things were just going downhill rapidly in my life. And she's in Al-Anon, and I got drunk one night after attending a bad AA meeting, and I knew she was having a party, and we had a second-story apartment, and I went over, apparently, I don't remember it exactly, but I'm told that I went and made everybody get off the couch, which my mother had given us, and threw it over the rail and tied it on top of the car, and made it out to my dad's. My dad had a cornfield out by his house, and when I woke up, I was laying in that couch out in the middle of that cornfield, and I was really thirsty and hungover, and I felt bad. And my folks, they knew, whenever they knew I was around, they locked everything up because they knew I would hawk their stuff. I would steal from them. And so they kept the place locked down until Sunday morning. But I also knew something my dad didn't know, and that's that my mother could not bear the idea that her son didn't have a place to go to clean up and get some, take a shower. And so I knew there was a side door that was open. And I walked in, and when I walked in there was a cassette player with they had those little cassettes. And I don't know why, but I just walked by and I punched it, put it down, and I punched it. And I heard Johnny Harris. And he said, it's been burned into my mind. He said, I don't know what to do. He said, a little over 22 and a half years ago, I was crawling around on my hands and knees in solitary confinement. He said, I was looking for something, and to make matters worse, I didn't know what I was looking for, and it had been that way all my life. And I didn't know how I got here. I never set out to do this. And I sat down and started crying because he just took a page out of my book. And here he was, cleaned up, sober, living a good life, had the respect of friends. And I couldn't lie to myself anymore that I was that different from you guys. I'm so thankful that that's what we do, that we don't tell each other what we are. We show up for each other, and we're an example. This is what I'm about. If you want to do this, I want you to do it. I would love to watch you do it. We talk about being happy, joyous, and free. You get sober, you get happy. You feel kind of free, actually. You're not drinking. Probably got a girlfriend. If you're an AA, boyfriend, girlfriend, pretty quick. And you got a car and a little job. And, probably if you're like me, you had business cards because you've already started a business. Can't work for anybody, so you start your own business. And laughing because there's like 65 businessmen out here right now. And I forgot where I was. My name's Danny. I'm an alcoholic. I really did forget where I was. Anyway, it was going to be good. I'll have to tell you something else because I'll be darned if I know what I was going to say. But I will tell you that when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I'd left home first time when I was 14. I'd run away from home, been brought back. I did terrible in school. I was a loner. I didn't mix well. I wanted to fit in, but I just was a loner, and I just didn't know how to do that. And I was also very proud, and I wouldn't let anybody know I didn't know what to do. You can't be very successful if you don't know what to do, and you want to do it, but you won't let anybody help you. So you turn to the bottle and you find your first friend. Your first friend, the thing that'll let you lie to yourself and lie to others. It'll let you live in a fantasy world. It'll let you be what you know you're not. And you can overlook your miserable existence, even if you're successful. I've sponsored doctors and psychiatrists, and I mean, when it gets right down to it, what I am, what you are, it's not the same. That has nothing to do with it. It's alcoholism. It's primary, it's permanent, it's progressive, it's under everything that's going on in my life. That's what's driving me. I had my first drink after I'd gotten out of the mental institution for the first time, and I stole my mother's car, went down, drove where all the cool kids hang out, and my mom's got this big Ford station wagon. It's not a cool car. And I'm a little skinny 14, 15-year-old. Got my cigarettes rolled up in my sleeve. I don't smoke. Those are my dad's cigarettes, but everybody did. And, and I go down there where they're at. And as soon as I get down to where all these guys are, and they're driving lowered 58 Chevys, and they're all muscled up, and I think, I got to go. This is not for me. But some guy saw me, and he remembered me from school, and he talked to me a bit, and he offered me a drink. And I had a few drinks, and sometime that evening, the magic thing happened for me, and I just unwound, and I could converse. I knew stuff I didn't even know. I didn't. I mean, I was having a great time. I fit in. I was one of the guys, and it was like the most. It was the most wonderful evening of my life up that point. Except there was a few things that went wrong. I puked on myself, got my nose broke, wrecked her car, and I wound up in juvenile detention. But outside of that, it was a wonderful evening. I knew I would do it again. I knew that drinking's not the problem. That's the first thing that ever solved the problem. I don't know how do you tell somebody what the thing is? How do you tell somebody it isn't being drunk that's my problem? It's being sober. It's when I'm sober and my head races and I don't know what to do and I feel overwhelmed and I'm phony. And I'm afraid for you to know that. I'm afraid to say I don't know where to start. I'm 34 years old, and I've lost everything. I never gave life a fair chance. I don't believe in God, and I don't like you. And you said, well, come on in this house. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I'm the guy that I go around pushing people away. And I walk into you, and you say, come on in this house. Come all the way in, sit all the way down. I was like, and I was that guy when I came to your meetings. I'm that guy that's got something to say about everything. I'm going to open my mouth. I'm going to talk at every meeting. They used to say, if you got $1, put it in. If you don't, take one out. They quit doing that at my group because I had no problem taking out dollars. And I hit on the girls. And I've scoffed at the old timers. And I know they were thinking, we'd really like to see him get sober, but does he have to do it in our group? But and I'm kind of all over the place, but I just want to tell you that booze was so important to me. It was the most, I just knew that I could solve anything if I could just get in the right spot and get in the right wife, get the right life. I went to a mental institution when I was 14 for depression, got out, did that little thing I told you all about, and my folks sent me back. I immediately escaped, and they came after us. But how it happened, we were walking from our ward where we lived over to the cafeteria, and as we're walking over there, there's a car, and it's unlocked, and it's got keys in it. I mean, is that odd or is that God? So I had two friends in that group that were in my ward, and I grabbed them, and we jumped in the car and took off, made that 38-mile ride from Big Spring to Midland. And when we got there, we picked up two more guys who should have been in that hospital. And this was like really heady. This is very exciting because this is like my first gang. I'm their leader. I've got a plan. We're going to Mexico. It's going to solve our problem. And I'm that guy that will like shoot arrows into a wall and then go paint bullseyes around them and then congratulate myself on being a good shot. And so I don't need any help. We're headed this way. And as we're heading south, those two guys that I brought with me, their meds began to wear off. And it became clear they were in that hospital for a reason. And as we made our way south, it became increasingly difficult for me to gather my gang up and get them back in the car. But we got across the border into Mexico and sold that car to a taxi driver for a few hundred pesos, which I thought was a lot of money. And we went to the Cadillac bar, and we're sitting there, and this is having a drink, and this is when I realized I'm completely out of plan here. I have no clue what to do. And all of a sudden, there's a big fight. And one of the guys that had come with me had a psychotic break, I guess, and he killed a parrot that belonged to a girl that worked down there. And it started a big fight. And I grabbed these guys and said, we got to get out of here and get back to Texas. And we ran for the international border, and they caught us on the Mexican side, and we went to jail in Mexico. That's what I said. In the doctor's opinion, it says that the alcoholic's problems pile up on him and become astonishingly difficult to solve. This is one of those instances that sort of bore that truth out because I'm not bilingual, and I just didn't know how to tell these people I want my mother. But she eventually found me. I got out. and left those guys there because she knew they were my problem. And, went off and we had a family meeting, thought I should join the Navy. I was about to turn 17. I told my dad, I was like, I'm an escaped mental patient. And apparently, in those days, the Navy had very low standards. And so I joined the Navy, and I liked being in the military. We all had the same uniform. I mean, it's kind of like you fit in. We do the same stuff. So I grew big and strong and became a CB, and I learned a trade, and we island hopped, and I drank, but I was finding myself more and more isolated because I could see that my drinking was different than other people that I hung out with. And so I would quit hanging out with them. I drank alone mostly, and I'd start experimenting with what I could drink and what I couldn't drink. I'm not going to drink this, I'm going to drink that. Always going to the beer experiment, stay away from tequila. I love tequila, but tequila doesn't seem to agree with me. And I'm just, I'm having all kinds of problems. And eventually, I got drunk in Guam and with some British sailors. And apparently, I'm just going to tell you what I've heard from the captain's mast is that I got on board their ship with them. I went to their vessel and passed out, and they went to sea. So they have when they do that, they always have a muster. Everybody comes out on deck and, count sailors, and they had too many. So it was pretty clear who wasn't British, And they call the shore patrol. They're not that far out. They bring me back, and I'm humiliated. I never set out to do that. I never set out for that to be that way at all. I want to be a success. I want my dad, who was a Navy veteran, Second World War vet, had seen combat. I wanted him to be proud of me. When I was young and his firstborn, when he came back from the military, he used to carry me around to bars with him. And I was just a little bitty guy. And, play with me out in the backyard. I remember him holding me to his bare chest and patting my head. And me feeling I'm with my dad and nothing can harm me. And I mean, that relationship meant everything to me. But my behavior, the things that had happened, just violated everything that he believed in. And so my dad, they asked him one day, where's Danny? And he'd said, Danny who? And turned around and walked off. And I never set out for all that. I got out, it got worse, I go to Skid Row. I get out of Skid Row. I can't seem to get up out of there. It's lots of interesting stories, But the truth is that it's just downtown L.A. is a tough spot. But I lived down there for a while. I got away. I went to Texas to try to work for my dad. Couldn't do it. I was an entitled, angry drunk. And I finally wound up hanging out with some guys who were stealing out of the oil field, and I joined them. And, it's like, well, we all got to do something. I'm a gangster, and I'm good with that. We ran for about 6 months and got arrested, and everybody went to prison but me. I got a probation, and they told me that this will be expunged from your record if you'll just don't drink, pay back the money, hold down a job, and don't hang out with those kind of people. And while I was in jail, I was absolutely convinced that's exactly what I want. I'm going to turn my life around. My dad's going to be proud of me. My mom's going to be proud of me. My brother's going to quit being afraid of me. I'm a good person. This isn't me, what's happening. I got out and it lasted 3 weeks. I had a job pumping gas. And one day I looked at this guy. He's in there in his car, and I thought, he can pump his own damn gas. And I just left the nozzle running in his tank, and I went inside to the cash register, made a cash advance, went across the street to a bar and took a drink. And when I came to, I was in Dallas. And I just did what we do, I drank, I run, I hid from everything, and I finally was arrested and got 13 5-year sentences, and I was sent off to the Texas Department of Corrections. And what I can tell you about doing time in Texas in the 60s is it's very time-consuming. And wrote letters to my mother. It's going to be different. I finally learned my lesson. She knows it. She believes it, and so do I. I am never drinking whiskey again, ever, except on special occasions. And we'd agreed. That made sense. And I could see that I needed to hold down a job. My lifestyle was my problem. my choices, my being irresponsible. So when she came to get me out, when I got out, she was excited, I was excited, and I bought a half pint, but it turns out getting out of prison is a very special occasion. I got out, I took that half pint, I couple of pulls on it, and I hit that sweet spot, and we're going back to Midland, making great plans for my life. She's excited, I'm happy, I'm in the zone. And my mom, while we're riding, my mom says, son, what you need is a wife, a kid, a car, a bank account, a job, and a house. You'll be okay. So when we got back to Midland, I went looking for a woman that had kids, a bank account, a job, and a car. And I found her. My mother was wrong. It was the worst 2 weeks of my life. I left her and met another girl. Married her, called my mom, Mom, I'm married. And she said, I know. I said, I don't know how you could. I just did it. And she said, oh, my God, Danny, you have a wife. About details. And so it just keeps going down. There's a lot of funny stories, a lot of drunk things happen that you think, Jesus, how can you get in that big of a mess? But drunks are we're very ingenious when it comes to screwing up life. And I met a gal. I got divorced from both of those. I got an annulment from one, I think, and a divorce from the other. My mother pulled it off for me. And so I am in love, and I don't know who with. And I go to a bar one night, and in walks this girl. And the moment I see her, I'm in love. We're totally in love. Like, you don't usually fall in love at that depth until you get to a treatment center. And, but so we set up house, but this time I'm way out of control. I'm angry. I'm using all kinds of other substances to control it. I'm drinking heavily. I'm in trouble. I'm headed back to prison, and I'm abusive. And she had to get away from me in order to save her life. And while she was gone, she was killed in a car wreck. And I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't feel bad for her. I don't know how to say this, but it was years later in AA that I really realized I didn't feel bad for her. I felt bad for my loss of her. I remember thinking, why does all this happen to me? I hurt. What's wrong? Me. I pour me a drink. So I got a bottle of whiskey and a gun and went on a crime spree, and I got 10 years in prison. I did my time. It's same story, my mom writing the same letters. Everything's the same, except this time I got an education. This time I'm going to be different. I get out and all those things happen. I meet that gal. I marry her. There's my life. And then I get dropped off in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm running for my life, and I wind up down in Austin, Texas, and I'm going to AA down there. And I got drunk one night, and I just came to out in this pretty rough part of town. And I was in the back seat of that old stolen car, and I had 3 old Milwaukee beers left, and I was puking blood and bile. And I just said, God, I'd do anything if I could get sober. And I don't know the rest of the story on how it happened, but I know that John Henry, my sponsor, my original sponsor, came to get me, him and a young guy. It wasn't the first time he'd come got me. He didn't, apparently when I called him, he didn't say, you're not serious. I called, he came. And I'm riding back with him, and I said, John, what am I going to do? He said, no, Danny, if you don't drink, you won't get drunk. I said, well, how do you do that? He said, well, don't drink right now. And then when it's right now again, don't drink then either. And that kid said, yeah, and pretty soon you'll have like a minute. And John Henry said, don't pay any attention to him. He said, in Alcoholics Anonymous, what you'll learn is that minutes become hours, days, weeks, months, years. You join us in this thing we do, and you find yourself a sober, self-respecting member of Alcoholics Anonymous with a host of friends and a relationship with the power that runs this universe. Drunk on the way to that club, I was smitten with a magnificent obsession for sobriety. I wanted to be with you and like you more than anything else in the world. From that day to this moment, that has not changed. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. This is all I want to be. It's all I want for you. I don't know how you're going to work out the rest of your life, but I know how you're going to work out your spiritual life. It's in this group with these people using these tools will change you forever. And my life began. I'm riding around. I'm getting up in the morning. I'm helping set up that club. And the people that I used to make fun of are suddenly looking at me and saying, "You're doing good, kid." And that was music to my ears. One of them gave me a big box of tapes, and I'd ride around and listen to AA tapes. And I remember one of them saying, "Let go and let God." And I thought, let go and let God do what? And I thought, John Henry will know. And I drove to the club, and he was standing out front. And I looked at him, and I just said, "John Henry, I'm alcoholic." He said, "Yeah, you are." And he said, "Come on in this house." And I went in back in the back room, and we sat down. And he told me about himself, and I listened. He wasn't anything like I thought he was. And he encouraged me to open up and talk. And he listened to me, and he said, "Danny, there are people in AA who go to meetings, and they just seem to be happy doing that. They're involved. I don't know anything about them." He said, "But there are people like you who have no chance of staying sober, zero, apart from that you have a psychic change, a personality change. And I don't know if it's going to happen for you, but I know what I did, and it happened for me." And I said, "I'm willing to do whatever it takes, John." And we got on our knees, and we said a prayer, and he had me write an inventory. And I wrote that thing. I hid it all over my car because I just knew I was going to get caught and go to jail. And I shared that, and when I shared that, I had a big spiritual awakening. It was just amazing. I just knew there was a God. I knew my life would be different. I knew I was going to be free from the booze. And I wanted to get back to that club and take over, start chairing all the meetings, straighten out those old timers. I'm on fire. And and I instantly start 12-stepping and helping people. And I was talking to Ian about this, and or he was telling me about him. And I lasted 6 months, Ian. 6 months. I'm 12-stepping. I'm answering the phone. If you're in trouble, I'm on the way. I don't have a message other than I know where the message is, and you're going to love this, dude. And I was a pretty big, strong guy. If I needed that for you to get in the car, you're getting in the car. You're going to the message. I've had more than one person leave mad, but I'm doing everything I know to do, and I'm at AA all the time. But 6 months into it, I got to go. I can't do this. It's just too much. And I called John Henry, and I said, "John, I'm leaving." And he said, "Danny, why don't you meet me at the club before you go?" And I said, "All right." And I met him down at the club, and I said, "I just can't, John. This isn't going to work for me." And he said, "Danny, what's standing between you and that God that you experienced are the things that are on your 8-step list." I said, "Well, there's some things I didn't tell you." He said, "What are they?" I said, "Well, I'm living in a stolen car." He said, "Well, now that's a problem." And in the summer of 1980, there was a bank robbery in San Angelo, Texas, and they got it on videotape. And they're looking for me. I also haven't reported to my parole officer in 2.5 years. And he said, "Well, son, you've got to go in and clean that up." I said, "Oh, no. Oh, no. He said, "You told me when we started you were willing to go to any length to have this gift." I said, "That is theory. This is serious. They will lock me up for the rest of my life." He said, "Well, get you a new sponsor, son, because you will not make it with that." And I went and sat down in that car, and I just sat there, and I cried, I raged, and I finally just looked up and said, "I'm too afraid. I want to do it, but I'm afraid." And all of a sudden, I just had this epiphany, this calmness, and I knew for a certainty that 4 walls do not create a prison. Prison is what you carry around on the inside of you. And I had the keys to the kingdom. I could run like I always did, or I could become willing to sacrifice my physical freedom to have what you have. I went to the robbery department in Austin. The next day, I parked that car a long ways away. And I went upstairs, and I told them who I was, and they took me into the robbery department, and they had a copy of the videotape. And it was a grainy tape, about 15 seconds long, of a tall, skinny guy going from till to till. And the second, I told the guy all about my good AA work. I'm trying to get a little favor. And the second time he played it, he turned around and looked at me and he said, "The guy I'm looking for wouldn't walk in here." He said, "The guy I'm looking for is out there and I'll find him." He said, "But you need to get your skinny butt back to AA and maybe you can do something about the mess you've created. Now get out of here." I said, "I'm in AA forever. I'm not afraid to make amends. Yeah, I'll make yours. I don't care." And it started, my life started. And I've had I don't know what time is it, good Lord. I learned something else in that, Dan, in AA, is you never have to be alone again in Alcoholics Anonymous, unless you talk longer than an hour. But I joined AA. Several people have asked me, I've had more people here ask me, "How'd you wind up being a circuit speaker?" I have the same question. I don't know how that happens. They don't have a committee to send everything in. It's just, I'm showing up and I'm doing what I do in AA, just like you do. And I think through your service, you're placed where you're wanted, where you're needed. I don't think you have to worry about where you sit in society. Just serve where you're at, and society will move you where you need to be. And by the way, Lauren, you took one from me. I'm going to take one from you. That car analogy was amazing. That's mine now. I understand being afraid to get up and talk to people, but you really have the gift. And unfortunately for you, you'll do this a lot. So it's true. Patrick's nodding his head. He heard it too. You got what it takes, but all of you do. I sponsor a lot of guys. I live in a big house. I've been all over the world in AA. I've had health problems. I've been bankrupt. I've been up here, been down there. I've gotten off the beam to the point that one time when I was 27 years sober, a guy came to me, Charlie Parker, who just died, came up to me and he said, we don't need another drunk Danny Brown. Made me so mad, and I drove off, and I knew he was right. I was living on the edge. I'd gone to the edge of the precipice. I wasn't drinking, I wasn't drugging, but mismanaging funds, gambling, chasing women that you don't need to be chasing, and my life's a wreck. And he had enough love that he came to me and said something. And finally, I called him back and I said, "Charlie, you're right." I said, "What do I do?" He said, "Come on over here. Let's talk." And we get started. And I got re-energized in AA. I became dedicated. I said, I'm going to be the best AA that I can be. I'm going to be the man in Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to shine my sobriety. When I go places and see people, I want people to want to know, how did you, of all people, get like that? And I want to tell them, I met these people. I met these people that had this book, and they taught me a way to live. And not only taught me a way to live, they said, "We'll stick with you to the bitter end." And the only thing I had to do was surrender and join you in what you're doing. My life is absolutely amazing. I mean, I went from living in that car to all that stuff. I'm living in Spring, Texas. I got a pretty big house, big swimming pool. So now here's the part everybody's wanting to hear lately. I'm married. And she's not my age. She's young. She came up to me 5 years ago, and she said, "I've had a crush on you for a couple of years." I said, "Do you have any idea how old I am?" And I told her, and she sat there a minute, looked at me, and she said, "I don't care." I said, "Well, what do you do for a living?" She said, "I'm a hospice nurse." I said, "Wow, I'm going to need one of those." The night we got married, I had a heart attack. Not for the reasons you think. It was I just had one. It was coming that night. And she stuck with me and helped me out. And this is the part that I love. I love getting really emotional in front of a group of people. I just like to do that, you know. Sometimes I just want to go to the mall and gather up a bunch of people and cry. And, but she stayed, and we've just have this amazing world life. Of course, AAs are all like, man, they're like, you hear what's going on, but we live a normal, wonderful life. She is just a fantastic human being. And we got these 3 dogs, and I'm active in AA, and she's active in AA. And I'm like, how's it going to get any better than this? And then one day I come home about a year and a half ago, and she's staring, and she's kind of quaking. And I said, what's wrong? I thought she was sick. And she said, I'm pregnant. And I said, no, you're not. You're not pregnant. And she said, yeah, I am. And so we have a little boy. He's 7 months old. And so I get nap trapped now all the time, and I'm up changing. Who knew diapers were that big of a deal? That's terrible. We wake up in the middle of the night, and somebody got to change his diaper, and I have to lay there try to pretend I'm asleep. It's your turn, and but you get the little guy, and you pick him up in the morning, and he just grins, and. I highly recommend this way of life. You cannot write your story. I'm going to tell you this about my dad, and I want you to know this because I used, until this baby came along, I didn't really have much. I had this canned story, but he'd come along, and it's like I got my phone, I got 500 pictures of him already. But when I went through the steps the first time, I went to make amends to my dad. And he just immediately said, son, that's fine. It's fine. Just get on with your life. But there was this big gulf between us. And I would go back and try to, family meetings or gatherings, and he'd just be kind of off by himself, away from me. And I'd ask you, how do I fix this? And you said, you continue to be a good son. You continue to send cards, show up at meetings, show up at family gatherings. You be a good person. You be a good member of AA. Hold down a job. And by the way, son, your family's they're through raising you. You're self-supporting through your own contributions. You quit calling your mother and telling her all the trouble you have. Because if you're not drinking, you're doing fantastic. And so when she calls and asks you how you're doing, you say, I'm doing fantastic. And he said, I don't care if you're walking on the street and you hadn't got a dime, you're doing fantastic. And I have to agree that's true. Because if you're sober, you got a shot. I went to Midland when I was 20 years sober, and I went to the meeting that I originally came in. And my folks were living there, and my mom was waiting up on me when I was going to spend the night with them. And I walked in their house, and I saw my dad back in his bedroom, and he was laying in bed, and he wasn't this big, strong, handsome man anymore. Time had worn him down. And I asked my mom, I said, is he asleep? And she said, he's just pretending to be. And I went back there to say goodnight. And when I got back there, on an impulse, I leaned down and kissed him on his old bald head. And before I could pull away, he reached up and pulled my head to his bare chest. And he patted my head. And he said, son, I didn't know what to do. I said, me neither, Pop. He said, those people in AA, I hope you'll always remember to tell them how much we appreciate them, how much we love what they've done for you and for our whole family. And I said, I always do, Pop. We became the best of friends for the last few years of his life. He was the champion Wii bowler. It is. And I knew he and I were tight because he got me my own remote, And I got a call in 2009. I got a call. My brother said, if you want to see your dad alive, you better come now. And I said, I can't do that. I can't come. And I went to my AA club, and there's a big old beast of a guy, Marine. He came up to me and he said, "You go get on that plane and you fly up there and go in that hospital room and be with your dad. And when it gets too hard, you step outside and say a prayer. You call us." AAs were all over that hospital in support of me and my family. I was there with my dad when he died, and my mom was there. And when my dad died, his eyes glazed over and his jaw went slack. And my mom was looking at him, and I said, "Mom, he's gone." And we waited a minute, and he nothing. And she looked at him because his eyes were still open. She said, "Dan, what are you staring at?" And all of a sudden, he raised up, and he closed his mouth, and he looked at her, and he said, "I see a dove." And he lay back and died. I don't know what that was, but I know it gave me great peace. I believe in the power of this universe. I have lost my fear of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter. I want to walk this journey with you, and if there's anything I can do to add to your sobriety, I hope that I'll do that, and that I'll allow you to do it for me. I love you, and thank you.